Okay. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Charles from the channel Books on Stereo, and I'm here to present you guys a really special interview today. I have the Webster on my channel, and if you haven't read her books or haven't been exposed to any of her books, I don't know what you're doing if you read romance. Like, I can never keep up with your backlist because I just turn around, I'm like, how did Kay already drop like 5 new books? I'm like, where have I been?
Seriously.
I'm just like, I just look at the sheer amount of books, and I saw you made a book list that you put on your newsletter. And I was like, that's gonna take me forever to get through.
Yeah.
And I think I've read a lot of Kay Webster books.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm going to read her backlist. I'm going to do it, no problem. And then I pulled it up and I went, oh my God.
I saw that and I literally just like crawled into a hole. I was like, I can't do it.
It was overwhelming.
But how are you doing today, Kay? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Just busy working all day, just every day the same.
Okay. And so the first question I have to ask is like, how did you get started with writing romance? So were you always a romance reader?
I actually didn't start reading romance until maybe like a year before I started writing it. I actually read a lot of like Dean Koontz and just like dark suspense, murder mystery, scary things, paranormal things. And it wasn't until, I don't know, I want to say around the Twilight era where someone was like, oh, you need to read this. And since I was into paranormal, I was like, okay, and then I was like, ooh, I like this romance aspect. So then I started reading all the romance.
Oh, that's so cool. I would never thought that you read like the Dean Koontz. I was like thinking you were gonna say, I've always been reading romance since like the Harlequin days.
No. Like do you know who R.L. Stine is?
Yes.
Well, I have every single book. I started reading him in the 6th grade, and my mom kept all those books that I had, and I now have them upstairs, and I just love anything that's creepy or weird or psychologically terrifying. I just love to read it.
Yeah, like I realized by reading your books, like I have to be careful when reading your books because like you discover things that I like that I didn't even know I liked in books. So like the first thing I read the Cinderella trilogy, and I actually talked to Misty about this. I was like, I did not realize I liked the kink. I didn't expect it at all when I went into I was like, oh, it's a new Kay Webster. Her super hot. Let me go in and give it a try. And I was like, what is this? I never read this in a romance before. I was like, where did that series come from? Because I was like, I never quite seen that kink used in a romance. I was like, I like this. I was like, I really like this. I was like, hey, I need to write more books with this kink in it.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, I feel like when I read your books, it's layered, right? Like it's not just about dark romance. It's not just about kink. It's not just about taboo. There's a suspense component. So you can see that influence of like mystery, and you're trying to unfold like, well, what's going on with this character, and how did that happen, and then there's also like a real psychological component to that's folded into all of your characters to understand the psychology behind their personalities and how they became who they are and why they present in the way that they do. So for me, it's like layered, which is, I really love that.
Yeah, I do. I love that too. And I don't know, I've always liked psychology, and I've like read all these psychological disorders. I just like learning about them, and so it's kind of fun to like incorporate them into my characters, and like you said, like reasons why they behave a certain way, why they're not perfect because of this and this and this, but how they can try and be better, despite that or whatever. So, and with the Cinderella series, it's in the Dangerous Press world, which is like or the Midnight Dynasty world through Dangerous Press, but basically it's like an already designed world, and then we just write characters that are in this developed world. And so they had like different characters, and one of the characters was Winston, and they were like, he's the CEO of this company, and just as soon as I like saw his name and his job, I was like, ooh, like I just like got vibes for him, and I was like, oh, I want him. I can do stuff with him. And and they wanted me to follow a Cinderella theme, so it's kind of a loose theme, but it has a little tie-ins in there. And but the biggest thing is they were, you know, like, oh, you should make it kinky, and I was like, okay. But then I was like, one of my big things that I like to do is I like to surprise people, give them something that they aren't expecting. So when they said you could make it kinky, I was like, I'm gonna make it kinky like they've never, you know, don't expect.
You want kink?
You would not expect it. I was reading the book and I was like, what? I was like, I'm into this. I was like, when it drops, I was like, oh. And then I was just like waiting for the next books to drop. I was like, you need to drop these books faster. I need to know what happens. Well,
what's funny is one of my favorite things is to write something that's really boundary pushing in a way that you're kind of into it. So like if someone said, do you like to read degradation kink? You would go, ew, no.
Yeah, right.
But I don't really warn you. I just kind of like tell you it's going to be kind of out there. And then you get in there and you're liking this character. And next thing you know, they're doing all this stuff. And you're like, well, I guess I'll let it slide.
I love it.
That was so true. I was reading it. I was like even with the stepbrother characters, I was like, are we heading? Now that the degradation people is out there, I was like, are we heading in like a menage territory too in the trilogy? I was like, I know they're like horrible people, but I was like, I'm into like the whole arc of the series. I was like, I would read a book following the stepbrothers and like their own like spin off like a Snow White as fairy tale retelling. I was like, I see what you're doing, Kay. I was like, should I be rooting for like? I was like, should this? I was like, what? I was like, I like this, but I was like, I just love that you play with expectations like that. And that series is so addicting. Like the whole arc, and when you get to the third book and everything is revealed, I was like, how do you manage to do these like incredible plot twists? That was just like, I had no idea that was coming. Like I was like, the steam was just like so good. The characters were so good. I'm like, wait, I didn't even think about like all these plot elements. And I was like, oh wait, that does make a lot of sense. So like the things that like you figure out what this evil stepmother and the ties to Cinderella story. So like I think it was like really, really well done, and like it's probably my favorite trilogy by you. But like I do have to talk about the Briggs Bay, the one that you co-write with Misty Walker, because I love MM, and so when I read Share a Secret, I was just like,
you're like, what?
I'm whipped. I was like, you can write anything. I was like, this MM is probably one of the best MMs that I have read. I was like, I love this so much. Like, aww. I read it physically before, and then I saw when the audio came out. I was like, I immediately bought it because I was like, I already read the book, but I was like, I need this audio. Like, it's just a good book. So where did that series come about with you and Misty?
Well, you know, I get on these kicks where I read a certain thing and I read it to death. And so, you know, like when I read Aliens, I read all the Aliens there was, and I just was obsessed for like a year. And then I read like all the bully romance that there was. And then I got on an MM kick, and it evolved into, I somehow got into small town romance that was MM. And I just loved the cutesy little quirks of the small town and the, you know, the people that are just rigid in their ways and all this stuff. And I just liked how everything connected. I'm a person that likes when things just, there's all these like little, you know, webbings with everything. And so I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we did some kind of world? And I didn't really have the time to co-write, because it's a lot harder to co-write than it is for me to just whip out a book, because it's a lot of back and forth and it puts extra pressure, even though it's fun. And I thought, well, I could do a world. And so I asked Misty, I was like, because she loves him too, just like me. And so I was like, what if we did like a world where we just had like all these characters, and then we just kind of wrote in the world? And she was like, ooh, yeah. So then we kind of like developed the world, and it was fun. Like I got in Photoshop and I designed a little map so I would know where everything was. And anytime I'd say, well, what does your guy do? Oh, he owns this bar. Okay, what's the name? And she'd tell me, and I'd say, okay, well, we're going to put it right here across from the police station, you know? And so that way we could like write the same area and the same stuff, you know? So it was really, really fun to do that. I don't know. I love it.
I love it. I do have a bone to pick with you with the third book.
Uh-oh.
You like sank my ship. I was like, it was going to be Callan and Zach. Like, I got the vibes from the first book, and I was like, who the hell is this Atlas character?
Right.
I was like, but I like it. But
Yeah.
I was like, still, I was like, I need Zach's book now because like I shipped them so hard in the first book with their relationship, and then like you get a little tease of that in Callan's Atlas, but then like Atlas shows up, I'm like, dang it, can you just like sunk my ship so hard? But like I like this ship even more.
All right. Well, don't worry. I am going to hook you up with a great Zach story, and it's going to just. They're so loud in my head, and I'm not even supposed to write them right now, but Zach has things to say all the time, and I'm like, okay, just be quiet. I will get to you, you know.
Right. Wait your turn.
But it's already gearing up to be fiery hot and emotional and tense and angsty and dramatic and all that
all
stuff.
of it. All of it.
Yeah. So
I'm so ready. I was like, when I saw that, I was like, okay, I need to find out. Like, so I checked if like Misty's book was gonna be Zach's book. I'm like, no, it's not. I was like, I need to find out I need Zach's book like right now. I was like, he deserves the world. Like, even though Atlas is great, and I shipped them too, because you get like a little cop kink in that book too.
Right.
I was like, I just need like 20 more MMs from you, like stat. Like, they just like I read Shared Secret. I was like, I just need to read this book slowly because I'm just so into it. It's so good.
Well, you guys can probably always tell the books that I really love to write, because those, it seems like, are the ones that are just like juicy and just, you know, the other ones are like, okay, well, that's a good story. And then some of them you just really feel, and you're like, and those are usually the ones where like I was feeling passionate about it. I couldn't stop thinking about them or whatever. And those are the ones that always, and I can always tell when I finish a book, I'll think, oh, that was a good book. Or sometimes I'll say, and it's my little joke, I always say, that's going to be a moneymaker. You know, that's what I always tell my husband, because he doesn't know what I do. I always say stuff like that. And I'll say, that one's going to be a moneymaker. And he's like, okay. And then anytime I have that like thought, it's usually one that is more popular for the readers. So I guess if I love it more, you guys love it more, obviously.
You know what's really interesting? It's funny that you say that, because I was thinking that your writing style, and I wonder how it is when you are co-writing with someone else, because your books are the only books that, for me, as I start page 1, I'm like gripped. Usually it takes me, like, I can judge whether I'm into a book. Like if I'm at page 70 and I'm still not really, I'm struggling to get going, I'm like, I'm not really going to like this. But for your books, I feel like page 1, I'm riveted. You know, do you have a different process when you're writing independently versus when you're co-writing? Because it seems like it carries through even with the books that you write, you know, you co-write with other authors. So tell us about your process a little bit.
Well, you know, I always go with that whole thought of you try to grip them from the very first page, you know, and I know how it is for me. I'm the same way. If it's just a lot of filling kind of, you know, backstory and not any thing that's really happening, I get kind of bored. I'm a dialogue girl. I love to hear them. I love the banter. I love to hear people talk. And so if it goes too long without any conversation, it's all internal monologue, I'm like, okay. And so that's why a lot of my stories just start out with a bang, because I want you to just be already just, you know, hooked. And so, and then with co-writes, it's a little bit of a tricky process, even though it's really fun. Like I really enjoy the process, because you know, writing is such a lonely job that you don't get to talk to anybody really. But when you're co-writing, it's like you're a team. You're working on this together. You're hatching out the storyline. Like you're constantly communicating. You're on the phone. You're just really like working together. And teamwork it can be fun, but it's also hard because you're giving up things that you might not normally give up. So like I tend to be like a huge boundary pusher, but not everybody I write with is that way. Like, and that's okay. That's them. And they also give up things that maybe they're a little more braver when they write with me than they are on their own or whatever. So, or a little bit more, you know, I don't know, more towards my direction. So we just kind of have to meet in the middle a little bit. And I'm kind of, I guess I'm just kind of anal about like whenever I co-write, I like it to read like one person wrote it. So I spend a lot of time going back through and, trying to smooth it out to where it doesn't seem choppy, or like if one person kind of has this kind of writing style, we try to add some of that into my section and add some of that into their section, just mix it up a little bit, so that way it's not just obvious that two different people wrote this.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that takes a lot of work, so it means I'm reading through like a whole lot of times, because I want it to be smooth.
Yeah. And it is like for all your co-written books, like you can't tell like that it was written by two different people. Like the voice stays same, and like one thing that I love about your books is like I'm usually like 100% audiobook reader, but you're like one of my rare exceptions. I'm like, okay, I know I have so many books. I know audiobooks are expensive, so you know what? I'm just gonna go read it because I know I'm going to be gripped and hooked. Because usually I find like some books, like especially some romance books, that have like a really good prologue, and then chapter one is like, where was that whole momentum? I was like, now we're just like, and I went to the store and I did this. I'm like, it's like, no. So I'm like, I'm trying to do text to speech. I'm trying to get them. I'm like, because I'm horrible at DNFing books. So, but I love when I pick up your books. And I was just like, I think I read the first book in the Cinderella trilogy in a day, and I didn't even intend to, because I was just like, once it started happening, I was like, okay, how many pages? I'm like, wait, I'm already done. I was like, what is this? I was like, I need more.
Yeah, 100%. I'm an audiobook reader myself, like 100%. I do everything in audio because I'm got a lot going on. But the first book of yours that I read was Wild. And when I heard about Wild, I was like, I told somebody, I was like, I heard it was on the banned list and you couldn't get it on Amazon. You had to go read the author. I was like, well, sign me up.
I was like, give me this book. I was like, I need to find this book. I was like, how did it get banned? So I was like, I need to read this.
Out with this, and that, like, I sat and I was like, like gobbled it up, It's just, and it's one of those books that stay with me. Like I still think about that book to this day. Certain aspects, certain parts of it, and I read so much in a year. To say that like one book that I still think about it years later after I've read it is like it's a talent for sure. It's amazing.
I absolutely love it.
The Wild is definitely one that people will jump through a million hoops to try to get. Like, people always, a lot of times authors say, well, you want to be on Amazon because it's the easiest for readers to get to, and that they're not going to work very hard to get the book. And I'm like, the proof is in the pudding. The readers, if they want it, they will get it. We are living in a digital age, and people understand technology a whole lot better, and they also don't like to be told what to do. So people have that kind of like oppositional disorder thing going on, and so you tell them they can't read it and they're like, oh, I'm going to read it. Where do I get it?
I'm going to find it.
Yeah, exactly. And so people, to this day, just come to my website and just buy the heck out of that book because they want it.
And the other thing I think that I want to plug for you and say, I've had an amazing experience interacting with you, over ordering books with you and emailing you like long time ago, like just, that you're so responsive, and I get my books in like 2 days. Like you're like, it's going out today. And I'm like, oh my God, that's like this wonderful package with all these goodies in it, like little bookmarks and fun things. And I just love that interaction that you have. Cause I know that you're busy and you got a lot going on, but I feel like you recognize that you are your product and you are your business. So you add that to the interaction piece when people are buying things from you. So I just think that that's amazing. I always appreciated that about you.
Well, I before I was in writing and stuff, I worked at a bank, and I did like mortgage loans. I did basically everything at the bank. So customer service was like my thing. And I always was like, I wanted to be the best, face of the bank or whatever. And so I was always like trying to make all the customers love me by, talking to them and stuff. And that was like one of my favorite things. And that just carries over, what you learn and that kind of thing carries over into my job now. And it's just, it's just customer service really, and making sure the customer's happy.
You do a great job. I feel very taken care of for sure.
Yeah. That makes me happy.
Yeah. And I love that your books are like on Eden. So I was like, I just like went on there and just like, and then like they had Madison Faye, which is like I know she's like completely banned off of Amazon, and I love her books. So I'm like, is this like my Taboo Corner where I can find like my books that Amazon and Apple won't cover? Because when I heard the premise for The Wild, I was like, hold up. I need to read this immediately. Because, like, I think me and Taji are, like, on the same level. We're like dark romance, but we're, like, already in, like, the darkest, bleak, black romance. I was like, I think I discovered I like erotic horror romance, and I did not know that was a thing that I would like.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm already, like, so, like, when The Wild came to me, I was like,
You're
I
like,
want
this
to
is
read it. I feel like everyone's gonna make a big deal about it. I was like, but I read it, I was like, ooh, I like this. And, like, it was like one of those books that stuck with me. Like, same with Apartment 2B.
Yeah.
That was one I just recently read, and I was like, at first I was like, Kate, I was like, what are you doing with this book? I was like, I'm it's not like 100% for me. And then the twist happened. I was like, what? I was like,
I was saying there's layers.
I was like, hold up.
Like, it's not just the romance. There's so much other things going on where I'm just like, I loved, you know, like the backstory of her history and her abuse, and that kind of cultivated that obsessive because she's trying to control her world, and you really built that out and kind of delivered it to people. And I thought you did. I was like, this lady has a background in psychology, or she really understands, because my background, I'm a psychologist by trade. And so when I read books, I'm like, she knows what she's doing. She's done her research, and I feel like she did a great job.
Well, thanks. I do. I mean, I just love it. I've got like 20 psychology books over there that I'm always just referring back to, and I don't know. I think, you know, I think watching shows like psychological thrillers and stuff are helpful, because there's usually some sort of mental disorder or something that is involved in that. And since that's basically what I grew up reading and watching on TV, I feel like it's just, you know, it helps kind of shape the story. It's, you know, stories they don't start out so sweet.
Yeah.
And I do have to say, Whispers and Roars is probably the one book that was like, when you said, like, it's best not to know anything before going in, I was like, first I was like, is this like a polyamorous type thing with, like, this Bones character? And, like, what is going on there? And then when everything was actually revealed, I was like, this is probably something you rarely see in romance being dealt with. And I like that in your books, you're not confined to any one certain genre. Like, you can go off and write, like, I feel like you can go, like, super sweet, very cutesy, like, kind of funny rom-com book, but then you can also do dark and heavy stuff, and then you can also do taboo stuff, and you navigate each of those different spaces so well. I was just like when I read it, I was like, oh my goodness, like, I think you're like you're like one of the greats in the romance space. I was like, I was reading, I was like, how did I not pick up on that? Like, what was going on behind the scenes? And then when you read it and then the way you handled it, I was like,
well, I wanted that story to be, it took me the longest to write that story. Like, normally I can just crank out a book in a few weeks, but it took me like 9 months of writing the story and really reading back through it and double checking and doing all the things. And because I wanted it to be so painfully obvious once you knew, and then you would just look back and go, oh my gosh, like, seriously, it just was staring me in the face.
Yeah.
But then I had read it so many times that I was like, is it too obvious? Is it too, you know? And so I struggled this whole time trying to make it right. And like my mom, she read it, and then she got to the end and she started it over again, because she wanted to read it back through, knowing all the things that she knew by the end.
Pick up the stuff that you like. There it is. That was the blueprint that you laid out for me. Yeah. How is that? Well, I'm just really, because you were talking about some of the other characters that are like screaming to come out. Like, when you wrote Whispers and Roars, what was that character like in your mind, and what were you like? How did it flow out of you?
Well, I just basically had to, once I, studied the disorder and everything to understand all of the aspects of it, and watched videos and things like that, then I just basically assigned these characters as fully fleshed out people in my mind, just as any other character I would do. So it was like, and I had to make sure that, the hero was, he recognized them all as well. You know what I'm saying? And so, because you you get like skewed perspectives, because the hero and the heroine aren't, they have a word for it. They're not reliable. Like, right. So when you're reading, there's your reliable narrator. They're not reliable narrators because they're the way they see things is not the way we see things. Yeah. And so I had to just make it to where, these were all, without spoiling it, that, every character was just completely fleshed out with quirks and everything. So it was easy to write on that aspect.
Yeah.
That was so cool to read. I was just like, I was blown away. I was like, how did I not pick up on, like, because I read a lot of mystery thrillers too, and I was like, I'm usually good at like picking up on the signs, but like this one I was like, because at first I was like, why is the hero cheating on the hero, like kind of like hooking up with this other person? I was like, how? And then when it was explained, I was like, oh. I was like, now I feel like an idiot because I didn't see it. I didn't see it all along, because like you do lay those breadcrumbs. Even thinking back in the beginning of the book, I'm like, oh yeah, there was something off about that, or there was like that character wasn't there when that other character was talking. So I was like,
sure.
Right. Yeah. Or like when Bones decides to just rip his shirt off in public, and it's like, no, you can't do that.
Like after it's revealed, you're like, no wonder everybody was like,
right.
Or like when, I forget the little girl, when she comes into the ice cream shop, when they're like, sitting and he orders ice cream, and his dad is like, what's going on? What's going on here? That whole
right. It was kind of like he finally could see what his son was seeing and understand it in a better way.
But I like that, like, once Yao like sort of has this conversation with his family, and he's like, this is my choice and you need to accept and be on board. Like once that sort of transition, I don't want to spoil, but I thought like it was really very well done.
Then everybody band together to be a family and help protect Katie, and even with the brother chasing after, one of the guys in the story, he's like, I'm running down the street, It's like,
yeah, totally. Mm-hmm. May I ask a question, Charles? Do you mind?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to, because the one book that like just is like at my heart and like, and I'm just beating to talk about it, is Hail. We gotta talk about. I loved Hail so much, and I just wonder for you, well, I think the thing that stands out for me when I talk about that book is how they diagnosed the sister with a mental health disorder. But as I interpret it, it wasn't a mental health disorder, but rather these feelings that she didn't know what to do with that plagued her. And she's like, and I don't want to infect anybody or him with this. And so she really has to grapple with this independently on her own, and what kind of angst and turmoil that creates. And for me, like, that's a book that I think will stay with me forever. It was so poignant, so powerful. And I wonder for you as a writer, how was that writing that Taboo story? And, do those characters stay with you, and or are you able to shed the skin, if you will, after you've written and moved past that?
Well, there's lots of stories that when I write it, I just completely almost forget about it, and then that's it. Like, I don't think about it again. And then there's other stories like Hail or The Wild that I don't forget because I've got an emotional connection to them. The Wild, the emotional connection is more because I had to basically fight for that book, so I feel very protective over the book. But Hail, I was careful how I put it out into the world, so I didn't have to be protective over it in that aspect. But it was one of those stories that I had read a book called Forbidden by Tabitha Suzuma, and I loved that story. But I was so devastated about the turn of the story, and I told myself, I am going to write a story that has this taboo element, but I am not gonna kill anybody off, and I was like, I need a happily ever after, and I will bend all kinds of rules to make this happen. I don't care. Like, I'll send them off into the middle of the woods to live happily ever after. They're not gonna die. And in that story, I loved it so much that I savored it, and I didn't just write it just let me get this done. I just like would think about scenes and think about scenes and think about scenes, and then I would write the scene, and then I would think about another scene and think about it. Like I enjoyed just thinking about them, and to this day I still listen to their playlist, and it just takes me right back to the whole story. And I don't know, that's just one of those stories that I was very emotionally attached to. I don't know why, I just loved them.
I'm glad that you said what you did, because I 100% agree with you. I've read the other book that you mentioned by Tabitha, Forbidden, and I was like gutted. And I was like, why did you just do this to me? This is a horrible experience. For them, even though you're like, this is taboo, yeah. I know, but at the same time, you can't do this. And I just was like, oh my gosh, it was so hard. But then when I read Hail, I felt the angst and I felt the pain, but I felt the joy at like, go off, go in the world, do whatever you have to do, but you need your HEA. You have to have it because it's hard fought for and you deserve it, despite what the world says,
Well, and what's really crazy is, people they like to give me crap about the stuff I write sometimes, like, why would you write this? This is terrible, and, your morals are, non-existent, blah, blah, blah. But I will tell you, anytime I've written any book, even the taboo books, I have had people that actually message me and say, thank you for writing my story. And you would think, and, I'm not going to go prying into their business, but just about every book someone's going to relate to, even as odd as we might think it is. And so it's like, it's kind of interesting to get that from, that just hearing from people going, thank you for writing this book for whatever reasons, but it really touched me. And it's like, okay, well, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing.
Please do not stop, because I feel like with some of the romances that kind of float to the top, like, I like romances where they take a risk, they do something taboo, or they do something to touch a subject matter that you don't really see, because, like, I find myself, like, not wanting to read, like, your cutesy, closed door, very clean, very, like, boy meets girl, they have a third act conflict that breaks them apart, and then everything resolves happily at the end. I'm like, I want to go on a ride, like, I want to experience different stories that I never experienced before. So, like, I'm looking for authors that, like, when I see your books, I'm like, I know Kate Webster's going to do something completely different. And, like, I know it's going to take me on a journey. I'm like, I don't have to read the blurbs for any of your books. I'm just like, I just buy all of them. So, like, I just pre-order. I'm like, when you drop, like, you're going to drop your Fury, your next MM book, and it was Step Brothers, it's like, that's all you need to know. One click. I was like, that's all you need to know. I'm like, I trust this author. She's going to do it well. Like, you're, like, in my autobiography, like Madison Faye. Like, anything you guys drop, I'm like, just send it to me. Just send it to me, because, like, sometimes you hit me in my emotions, which I was like, okay, like, I didn't need you to come for my emotions in this book right now. But then you're like, okay, here's some high steam. So I'm like, okay, like, I'm good. Like, if you wrote a closed door romance, I think me and Taji would, like, riot, and we were like, where was the scene in this book?
Well, what's funny is that you say that is, I'm actually writing a free story on Wattpad, and it's MM, and it's dystopian, but they're young, so they've kissed, but it's so interesting, like, there's just, like, all this angst and, like, all this stuff, and, like, you can just tell, like, you can feel, like, just, this burning, like, intensity. And at first I thought, well, nobody's going to want to read this because they're not banging on every other page, but I'm like, totally, I just got this little Wattpad following already, and they message me every day. We got a new chapter up. They want to know what happened. What's going to happen next? Why would you do this to me?
Yeah, good storytelling is good storytelling. Good writing is, you don't necessarily have to have all the smut. The smut is like icing, and it's nice and it's whatever. But if it's a good story, like, I'm good, and that's what I was saying. Like, we're riveted from page one because your stories have layers, and it's not just like, the taboo and the smut that's there, but it's the romantic suspense, and it's, it's the psychological components, and it's all the other factors that you pour into the book that brings it to life and sets it apart from every other author or contemporary author that we're reading, and that we all sort of, we love them for what they are, but it's just very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like one great example of that is your Bound duet. Like, I completely had different when I saw it came on audio, I was like, I wanted to read you, but I was praying to the audio gods, like, please let this be an audio. And then I saw it, I was like, okay, now's my time to read. And I was
Yeah.
I thought it was gonna go one direction, and then it just completely in the second book I was like, oh. And I was thinking like, are we heading to a foursome? But the way he did it and like spent,
oh my god,
like when it happened, I was like, oh my goodness, because I totally thought it was gonna be Brayden and Drew, and then oh my god, I always blanked on the female character's name, and then her and Ashton.
Mia
And I
and
thought like me and Ashton, I thought that was gonna be our couples, and then the end I was like, Brayden and Ashton. I was like, where are we going with this? And I was like, and then when Mia suggested it, I was like, oh, we're going there. But I like how you spent all the time in the first book and the second book building each of these characters.
Yes.
So you got to know each and every. So I felt like it was like almost like 80. There was like so much character development that happened. So when it did happen, you weren't like, what?
Well,
it was like, oh, it makes sense.
Whenever we wrote that story, before we started, Nikki was like, well, I'm really nervous to do this, you know, because I don't know what to do. And I said, well, listen, I said, we're going to fully flesh out these characters. And I said, and that's going to be the plot. The characters are going to be the plot. I said, so don't worry about the plot. Worry about the characters. Like the plot will fill itself in along the way, but we want to focus on each character, making them stand out, their favorite things, their quirks, and all the little things about it. And then I said, we'll focus on these two relationships, and then we'll focus on these two friendships, and then we'll focus on these two flirtations, and then that we're constantly giving these little interactions while building this couple on each side, and then get it all messy and complicated, you know? And so it was just one of those things that I had to tell her, just trust me, we'll get there. Because, you know, she would like worry, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? And I'm like, well, we're just going to let it happen. We're just going to see what the characters want to do, because they're driving this novel, not the plot. Yeah. And so we, you know, it was a different kind of writing style. But sometimes the books, depending on what they are, you know, they need that.
And not only did you have the angst between the characters, right, and trying to figure out their roles and like, you know, what's happening between us and our dynamic, but then again, here's the next layer of what's going on with the backstory of Andrew, and something's going on with Andrew because I'm seeing that, you know, he's reacting in certain ways when he's doing stuff. So what's going on there? And then you see this other swim guy, and you're like, oh, something's going to happen. Like, so then there again, so it's not just the dynamic between these main characters, but it's also this backstory and this, like, you know, unfolding plot line that has, you know, multiple layers to it that makes it so rich. You know?
Yeah. Well, that's what I like. I like that there's, you know, even like with the Cinderella series, like, you know, I had my little story I was supposed to just write with my characters, but I went to Sky, who runs the thing, and I said, tell me a little bit about these people. Tell me a little bit about these people, all these other people that have books. I said, because I want to like thread them all together. Like, you know, I just feel like that makes it fun for the reader to have all these little connections. And so I basically drilled her on all the other people's stories so that I could somehow try to connect them into mine. And I think the readers like that. And I don't know, it just makes it more interesting, the characters and the plot and everything. So
it was really great. I love, like, you know, the Bound series, I think, is really going to be one, like, rises to one of my favorites that you've done. Like, I really loved it. And you know, the other thing that you do that I really like is that you give an epilogue, but your epilogue is not like really extensive, it gives you just a snippet. And not only do it give you a snippet, but it's like 2 years and then 5 years, or 2 years and 15 years. Like, it gives you a snapshot out of like how it unfolds. And I don't often miss that in books. You allow your imagination to take you there, but I like when the author sort of gives you a direction, so you can say, okay, this is how it all sort of panned out, you know, 15 years later or 10 years later.
Right. So, and I don't necessarily like, you know, weddings. You'll see in all my books, I barely write weddings because I don't like to go to them, and I don't like to write them. And so if in my epilogues, a lot of times, and I don't do a ton of real like romantic proposals. I don't like to do those either. And so whenever I do the epilogues, it's always like you said, a snapshot, just a scene of their everyday life, but in their happily ever after. And you still get a little taste of their banter or whatever. And then you see their little mini-me's if they have them. And you just kind of get like a a fun little thing. But like you said, I always notice that my epilogues are always like half the length of a regular chapter. I just keep it.
It's a little taste, just enough.
It's just like a little taste. Instead of like the typical romance epilogue where there's a wedding, it's a proposal, they have kids. And like even in novellas, like sometimes it just like jars me when in a 50-page novella I'm like, wait, you guys just met and like like a year later you already have married and you already have 3 kids? I'm like, where did it? So I like how your epilogues are tailored to the character, so I'm not like going like, oh my goodness. Because sometimes I do get epilogue-itis with romance. Like when some authors have like 10 epilogues, I'm like, it's not really an epilogue. If you like more than if you have so many, it's like imagine a story with like 5 prologues. You're like, okay, is this the beginning? Is this the beginning? How about this is the beginning?
Where does this thing start? That beginning. I don't need the backstory. Throw me in.
But I just love this. I love the bound duet because I was just like, I was a little bit worried. I was like, okay, we have three male characters. I was like, I can easily see them all just like crossing and melding where I'm like, I can't tell whose head I'm in. But when reading, I was like, it was never an issue. I was like, I knew who Ashton was. I knew who Drew was. I knew who Braden was. I knew their interactions with each other. I was just like,
well, that's another thing I had told Nikki. I said with writing 3 male POVs, I said we just have to be very distinct for each one. Like, you know, Ashton is like a troublemaker and kind of a smartass and all this, and it's like he's got to stay consistent through all the chapters. And so like I wrote Ashton's POV and I wrote Braden's POV, and she wrote Mia and Drew. And but then there was parts where, you know, I would be writing my section and I'd be like, I don't know if Mia would act like this. Well, can you look over this and just fill in like stuff that she would say? And then I filled in a lot of Ashton parts because she's like, I can't write that boy. He is just something else. Like she said, nobody can write him like you do. I can't write him like you do. So I would go in there and add his dialogue.
But, you know, Ashton is needed, and his, like, you know, he brings levity to like really hard situations, like especially when they go back for the second trip to LA and they meet with the mom, and like, and it was very different when Braden was there versus like Ashton shows up and the mom starts doing her stuff. Mm-hmm. Ashton's like, nope. And he does it in in an Ashton way. Like, you're just like, you go. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, Ashton, I was like, on behalf of Mia, I would like to slap you at the end of book 1. I was like, you were just getting in. I'm like, oh, of course you horned dog. Like, now you're Braden. I was like, God dang it.
Totally.
I was like, totally. I feel like in Mia's fun, it's like, I feel like we all have to work because like Ashton is gonna just like seriously like fall in bed with Drew one day, then he's in bed with Braden, and then like they have a threesome, and then somehow Mia gets involved in it too. I was like, this really all started with Ashton, and so I was like,
yeah, I
love their relationship, but I was like, I love how also you play with labels, like sexual identity, and how it's really not like, especially with Ashton's character, because he defines himself one way, but then it kind of changes and morphs into like where you can't even call him like bi really, because I don't think because I think he's only really interested in Mia. So I like how you play with that. Like I was wondering with you, Nikki, was that something intentional that you wanted to play with, like the regular kind of like you're gay, you're straight, you're bi, and kind of play with those ideas?
Well, you know, and you, if you've read like a lot of my MM books, I don't know if you guys have, but a lot of them I don't like to label them. You will never. I mean, like if you read a lot of MM stories out there, and they're very specific, like they're this, they're that, they're whatever. And even if my character is bi or whatever, I don't really say that. I just let the reader discover what and learn it on their own and make their own deductions or whatever. And so that was kind of like how the Torn and Bound duet went. It was kind of like, you know, we think this one's bi, we think this one's probably bi, but we didn't want it to like define them. We wanted it to be super fluid, and like you said, just, you know, one day he loves her, and then the next day, no, you know, he doesn't know or whatever. So I don't know. We wanted to make it super complicated.
Well, and I think that was part of Ashton's personality, right? Like he dealt with the world based on labels, and if he could compartmentalize you and put you here, then he knew how to interact with you, and he knew how to deal with you. And so when Mia sort of comes in, and Drew is the one who really helps him to say, like, you got to shed, this because of Drew's experiences of being caught up in stigmas and labels. He's able to help him to kind of have that that transition and that process. And I thought it was really, really well done.
Thanks. We enjoyed writing that one.
You know what was really cool? I thought, like, what I take away with this goes to tell you, as I'm like having my glass of wine, is like all the drinks. I love the Fireball with the Twizzlers and like the Skittles with the vodka. Like, I was just like, oh, these drinks, I gotta try them.
I know. Well, you probably don't want to try them because I just made this stuff up as I was going. So, because I was like, and I thought about dumping all the Skittles in there, and I thought, that's gonna be nasty looking when all the color melts off. And then I was like, I think he called it like rainbow poop or something.
Rainbow barf. Rainbow barf.
Yeah, because I was like,
rainbow barf, yeah.
So gross looking.
But it's very college. Like, think about when you were in college. Like, I could totally see me and my, like, the college guys, like, putting, like, I think, what was it, the Twizzlers with the, what was it, the alcohol, I can't remember whatever it was, but the Fireball. They like put the cinnamon Fireball. I was like, yeah, that sounds like a college drink.
Dipping the Twizzlers in there.
And that's when all the drama ensues. They're like, as soon as they're like, give me the vodka, I'm like, oh, here we go.
It's going downhill. It's going downhill super quickly.
All their walls come down and they just get wild.
Yeah, so that was good for sure.
But I also want to talk about your MC series as well, which I recently read Copper, and I absolutely love that book. Like, I love the banter between Stormy and Copper so much. I was just reading them, like, I love Coin, but then, like, Copper came along, I was like, okay, bye, Coin. Copper's my new love right now. Like,
Stormy's so
they're dynamic. Like, and I felt like there's a little bit like what was it, John Wick vibes with Copper's character. I was like, I picked up a media. I'm like, is this like a little like?
I love John Wick.
I felt like he likes this movie because I'm like, I definitely get strong John Wick vibes a little bit in this book.
And don't mess with my dogs.
I like how Stormy is like, when he captures her, he's like, he's gonna kill me. So she's like, I just love their whole back and forth. And then she's like, oh no, I really actually like him.
Yeah.
How do I already pissed him off. I was like, let me try to recon and let me try to rebuild that relationship. So I love that kind of reversal of the captive like storyline and trope. So I was like, I loved it, and I loved it.
Well, what was funny is I wrote Coin, and because of his history and all the bad things that happened with his prior family, he was a very tortured character. But Copper grew up with a normal life, and he was an FBI agent. And yes, his brother went through this trauma, which affected him, but it didn't affect. He still had his ex-wife and his son. Yep. He didn't suffer the same trauma that Coin did. And so, at first I was like, oh, I'm going to make him this villain. And as I started writing, I was like, he doesn't want to be a villain, not like Coin. And so I had to like really stop and think about how it was going to play, because it was not playing out the way I had originally intended. And so I was like, yeah, Stormy's going to run this show, because she's Stormy. So it was fun.
I loved her character so much. She's like, oh crap, he's going to kill me. So let me try running. I was like, I love you, Stormy. I love like Coin and Copper's interaction in Copper's book, where Coin's like, why don't sleep with Stormy, like, and like they had a comment where Copper said like, I don't like you get off on people calling you daddy king. I was like, you just called out Coin so hard, and like he was just silent after that. Like, I was like, okay, I get you. I'm gonna walk away.
Yeah. He's like, okay,
moment.
Yeah.
It's fun writing the brotherly connection between them too, because before all of the stuff that happened with Coin, I mean, that's his brother. Like, so it's like when they're together, they're almost like normal brothers interacting, and they don't actually act totally like an MC Prez and one of his members or whatever. So it's kind of fun to see that side of Coin that he doesn't really show many people.
I just love that one moment. I was like, oh, I like how you just like threw shade at Coin, Copper. I was like, I like you. Because that is so true about coin. When I read that, I just kind of chuckled. I was like, that's like the one point I was like, I love this. Like, this was easy 5 out of 5. And I know we have another book coming out in the series, Dragon, right?
Mm-hmm. Dragon.
And I was like, hey, like, if you have like an arc, I need to continue on. I'm like, you and Missy, I'm like, I need your next books in your MC world because I can't wait. Like, I need them now on my Kindle.
Yeah. It's been pretty fun. What's that noise? Do you guys hear that?
Yeah,
Sounds
a little bit.
like a wind or something.
Just wind.
Oh,
But it's not too noticeable, yeah.
Yeah, that was just so weird. But yeah, so Dragon is basically that story is kind of hard to write because Dragon like went through a lot of trauma when he was a teenager, and so I'm having to like go kind of dive into that a little bit, and he's emotionally just like totally just so I'm having to really kind of dive into all those different aspects of everything. So I've been enjoying reading or writing that one. I like diving into the dark books every now and again and just going just brutal and gore and everything and just all the terrible things that can happen. And then it's like once I get that out of my system, then I'm like, okay, I think I'm gonna write something sweet.
That's what the Brick Bay series is for me. It's like it's my sweet low angst, unless it's Misty's book, and I was just like, Misty, why are you making me cry during like I was like this book is so heavy. But then like that's like my comfort. Like if I just need something light, something fun with a little bit of angst, high heat, then I go for that one. But if I want like your dark, taboo, like very heavy stuff, I'm like, okay. I can like palate cleanse like within the same author, which is rare. Sometimes I go like, okay, I read you author, now I need to go read this other author who can give me that like light fluffiness that I'm looking for, and I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
Is there a plan for your MC series to release that on audiobook? I know like audiobooks are, they have their challenges with cost, etc. But the more access we can get to your books on audiobook, like makes life so much easier. But I'm just curious if there's a plan for that. Because I know with the pandemic and things are like delayed and behind and all of that. So,
well, it's right now I don't have anything going for them. And it's kind of weird because I do audios two different ways. I do some of them on my own that I manage and take care of and handle. But it's like a lot of time and effort and all this. And then I have some that my agent will propose to Audible and see if they want to buy it. So whenever I had Feuds and Reckless Fury, I just told my agent about the story and I said, this is what it's going to be about. I haven't started writing it yet. Do you think that they would want it? And so she went to Audible and they're like, yeah, we want the story. So then I had to bust my tail and write the story. They bought it for audiobook. So I was like, okay, cool. So some of those, I like those because then I can do a release at the same time because it'll all pan out together.
Yeah. And that comes out, Feud and Fury comes out June 1st on Audible.
June 1st.
Yeah.
I already pre-ordered my copy. I was like, I'm ready. I was like, your MM is like one of my favorites. Like sometimes I just get in that like rut where I just need like good MM that doesn't fall into like the straight for you trope or like the coming out trope. Because sometimes it just irks me. So I just like your books. They're just like in this world. There's like a really great kind of like suspense subplot like that you wouldn't think that would be in those books. Especially Share Secret. I was like, oh, who's doing this? Like who's doing? And the ending you find out and you continue on through the books. I was like, I love that element so much. So I'm like, you're coming for the MM genre. Like you and Misty are coming for really, really hard. So I was like, I'm all here for it. Like I love it. Now I just need some FF from you.
Well, what's funny is I actually have a story in my head that I want to write that is FF. So
that needs to be your next book. Like I need it now.
Everybody always asks me, are you ever going to do an FF book? And I'm like, and I always tell them, I'll write anything if the story is there. Like, I'm not going to just say, yes, I'll do it, or no, I won't do it. Like, if a story comes to me, yeah, I'll write it. It doesn't matter. If it's going to be dinosaurs, I'm going to write it, and you guys are going to love it. You know, like, whatever it is. And so
you probably would.
Well, yeah.
I'm buying it. I'm all in.
I will make you guys love it. I promise. And so it's like with FF, it's like I haven't written anything like I've written a couple of short stories like or whatever here and there, but I haven't like written a book, but I want to, and I have a story that's percolating, and so once I get the fire for it to really just dive in and do it, I think it'll be really good and interesting and different. So
fun.
Ooh, I'm so excited.
I have a question for you. And as I said, I'm going through, I got the printed out list. I'm making it through the back list. So if you've already done this, you got to point me in the direction, but I'm not sure. Have you ever, because as we've talked about, I love dark romance, and the darker the better. I don't tend to go for the more traditional contemporary. And I feel like the line that crosses with dark to mafia romance and MC, like it's all sort of in that same camp. Mm-hmm. Have you written any mafia books or any thoughts about mafia or considered writing?
I have a series that I wrote with Karaduki, and it's the V Game series, and they're mafia, they're Russian mafia, and right, and so it's like really, really juicy and family ties and just drama and arranged marriages and just all kinds of crime and gore and just it's pretty good.
It's intense.
That from back then.
One of them,
you have to read it.
One that's more cartel, I guess, than mafia would be El Malo. I don't know if you've read that one, but that one's kind of it's not really mafia, but it's they're kind of mafia, Mexican mafia, basically. So
I just got that from you, like, I don't know, like 2 weeks ago or something. So it's on my list. So that's it's on my TBR for next week. So I'll get it.
And that book, the whole reason that book started is I was looking on the internet for some kind of travel or something. I don't know. I was just browsing the internet. And it said, I found an article that said the top 10 most dangerous cities in the world or something like that. And Acapulco, Mexico was on there. And I was like, what? That's not right. And I started reading, and it's like, it really has like transformed into this like really scary place. And so the more I read about it, I was like, this is totally creeping me out. Like, like it just spooky, all the articles. I mean, just creepy stuff, like beheadings in the street and stuff. Like, I mean, it's terrible. And like all the big, like restaurants and hotels and stuff are just like bailing. And so I was like, I'm gonna write my story there, because like this is a good place for a real dark story. And so that's kind of how that one started. So
nice. I'm excited to check it out. Yeah.
That's so cool. I picked up. I think for some reason I read it. I need to go back, because I feel like there's some books I read by you. I'm like, did I read that? Because I forget to mark it on Goodreads. So I'm like, I see you read on my Kindle, but I'm like, did I read that? Or just somehow like I messed up on my Kindle and like I said I accidentally read it.
Or sometimes you go and you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, I do. I remember this.
Yeah, usually like if I can't remember like a basic trope of it, I'm like, did I actually read that? Like, hold on, what happened in this book?
Think about reading it.
Yeah.
But
I think the other one. Oh, go ahead. Do you want to go?
Sorry, you can go, Taji. You can go.
I was going to ask about because I feel like you do a really good job of writing the obsessive hero, like that is like once he gets fixated on something, like he's like, and so like I have to say, like when I first got the copy of Notice and I read the back, and I think I did a book haul video on that, and I was like reading, and I was like, he's under her bed, and like I was read. I just lost my mind. I was like, oh my god. And then I read it, and I was like, oh, like I loved it. It's so deep and so in depth, and just to hear the layers. And when I get to the end, the trunk, I'm like, because what I thought was in the trunk was a whole different thing than what was in the trunk.
Right.
Let's talk about a little bit about Notice, because I just thought that it was just an amazing, and I get a lot of questions from people about, do you have a recommendation for an obsessive hero? I want an obsessive hero who's like just all into the heroine, and I think people will love that. So let's talk about that.
Well, Notice, I wanted a character that was like completely dedicated, like, and I thought it was just like a cute play on words, like notice, like your 2 weeks notice, but that was also when he like noticed her. And he's so like hyper focused on whatever he's working on but it's like she finally gets in his, sight, and then he just can't unsee her. It's like then he's like totally just fixated, and I just thought it went hand in hand with his past, with him, his military past, and how much of a perfectionist he had to be, and so every little detail mattered, and that just carried on for the rest of his life and his love life, if you would have called that. But I don't know. I just thought it would be funny to really just push all those, kind of make it funny in a little way, but also like super creepy. So you think, okay, he's under her bed. Oh my gosh, he's ordering things for her on Amazon, but really that's really creepy. Like he's under her bed. Like if someone was under my bed, I would have a heart attack and die. I don't care if it was my husband.
And
like, are you going to date them or not date them? Or like,
and the way he gets caught by the heroin, I was just like, it's like
I know.
Time to get caught.
He's like, it's okay, I love you, kind of thing, and she's all like, help me.
But I like how she acknowledges that she's into the kink a little bit, and like she kind of likes that. And I was like, oh, okay. I was thinking she's gonna be super mad. They're gonna break up. She's gonna go like, get away from you. And then she's also like, I kind of like this.
Well, and then you can also see like the psychological disorders that both he and his sister really have, because like she is like a big time hoarder, and you don't read about that really in any stories. And
no, you don't.
She was like big time, and so it was. I've always been fascinated by the psychology of those shows, like the reality TV type shows of those things. And I thought, I really want to include that in a story. Like, I just think that would be an interesting side aspect, So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely.
And I do need the son story too. Like the tease at the end, I was like, is this a familial thing? Because like now I want his story.
Everybody always asks, you're gonna write Thomas a full book? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe.
If it comes to you, like you get inspiration for it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it was definitely good. Had so many layers to it. I loved it.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved it too. I was like, is this like I said before, like you make me realize things that I did not know I needed. Yep. But now I need more of in my life. So I'm like, hey, we was just like pushing my boundaries left, right, and center. I was like, I didn't even know like I needed to read that. But now that I read it, I'm like, now this is like a recommendation video that I need more books to fit this criteria for.
Right.
Yeah. And then I I know that you're gonna like through the story, you're gonna like sort of tear my heart out, and I'm gonna get angsty and get anxious, through all the process. But I know in the end, it's all gonna come back together, and you're gonna give me my APA, and I'm gonna get my little snippet of the future. So I know if I hang in there with you through this ride, we're gonna be on it, but we're gonna get to where we go. Like I don't like walk away going, oh my God, what did you do to me? You know what I mean?
I was like, I can't read anything else right now.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, like I'm writing a love story. Like I want them to be happy. I just want to like torture them a little bit along the way, and and a lot of times my characters, it's usually something outside of them. A lot of times it's not even just them. Like there's always some kind of crazy thing going on, and but I want them to be happy at the end, even if they have to suffer a little.
And that's what I tell people. I'm like, if you read a Kay Webster book, like she is going to make her characters work for it, and they're going to have to put the time in, but they ultimately get their HEA. It's hard fought. And when they do get it like they hang on to it and it lasts because they put the work in to get there. And that's why I'm in the reading experience. Like that's what I want to experience through it. So.
Well, I'm glad that most people trust me when I write, that I'm not going to just throw like a total wild curveball. No, most of them trust me, I think.
For sure.
We do. And then I did want to also ask, this will be our final question, and it's going to be a little bit of a tough question. So what are some of your favorite romance books or authors? As many as you want, but what are some of your favorites?
Okay, well, first of all, I have to talk about, hold on, I just got to show you the picture. Hold on.
Oh, this is gonna be a good one. Like,
This is gonna be
we should
good.
be
I'm like,
taking notes. We're gonna get some good recommendations. It's
about
like,
Okay, so
I'm like, I'm all in.
there's this. Wait, can you tell? Have you read this?
no, I've seen that so
I've
going
seen
around. I was like, and I have never got into them.
This is my fit. Okay, first of all, it's on audio.
Okay.
So you guys, and I read them all on ebook, and then I turned around and listened to every single book on audio because I was that hooked on the characters. So then I bought the paperbacks, and I'm going to read the paperbacks next just so I can have read all 3 versions. But it's such a good, and let me preface this by saying I don't like sports stories. I don't like sports. I don't watch sports. I don't care nothing about sports. I just don't. Well, this series is a sports series. It's about this made up sport called Exy, and it's basically like lacrosse. It's anyway, it's very brutal, and it's like lacrosse and hockey if you mix them. And anyway, the main character, it's got like Mafia in it. It's got a little bit of romance in it. It's got like, have you ever read one of those, stories where you're like, rooting on the team, the underdog to win? Their team is the underdog. They're the misfits. They're the ones nobody cares about. And they think they're worthless. They're not good. And so it's so cool to see the main character bring all the other side characters together so they can become a team. And then he develops friendships, and he's such a guarded person. So it's just so, talk about character development. This has such great character development. And the romance is very small. It's there, but it's like, you have to appreciate it. You would enjoy it because of the psychological issues that these guys have. They're college age, and it's just a very just super interesting story, and just great lines. And I'm so obsessed with it that I have a picture hanging on my wall, a framed picture of the art. I have more pictures over there of these characters, and my phone screen is these characters, and my wallpaper is these characters.
Like, I'm not playing around. I'm invested.
When I get on Pinterest, I have to go look at quotes and arts from these characters. And I read these in January, and I'm still obsessed over them. So,
now, what's book 1? Book 1 is called what? The
Foxhole Court.
The Foxhole Court. Okay.
Okay, I'm reading it right now. I'm already gonna buy it.
It is so good. And some people are like, well, it's in third person. I don't care. She writes so good that it just hooks you. And if you just stick with it, by the end of the first book, you're just like salivating. And if you do read it, you got to message me so we can gush about it.
For sure. So it's the Foxhole Court, the Raven King, and then the King's Men.
Right.
We're all in.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're all in.
And I like
recommendation.
Right. And I loved the narration. I don't even really listen to audiobooks very often. But I was hooked, and I just had to hear it, and listen. And it's just this one guy who does them all, but it's just so good. And the main character is one of my favorite characters of all time. So he's just such an interesting character. I mean, there's just so many layers to him. So
nice, for sure.
Definitely recommend that. That's my favorite this year. So
nice. Are you reading anything right now?
I'm reading an arc of These Vile Secrets by C.E. Ricci, and it's a story, and it is super good. I'm about halfway through it. So
about halfway through it.
I'm so jealous. I saw that author pop up, and I was like, what? I was like, excuse me? I need, like, Instagram has been like showing me like some really great up and coming authors. There's BJ Blackley. I think you would really like this author, Kay. The first book is a romance with a glory hole in a truck style.
Really?
And that's how it starts out.
Well, yeah, I would want to read that. I would be interested.
I read it. I was like, I heard the premise. I was like, what? And when I read it, I just binged it. It's like super, super high heat. I never seen a romance start out like that, but I was like,
right?
I was like, okay. I was like, you won me over, Arthur. I'm like, there's no audio, but I was like, you won me over. I bought the rest of the series.
Right.
It's really good.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, and there's another author called Barbara Ellsborg, and she wrote a story called The Making of Jaunty Bloom. It is one of my favorite books of all time, and it's set in the UK, and it's about this young, quirky little hotel guy. He works at the hotel. He runs the front desk, and he's super sassy and just kind of crazy. And the guy that sort of like manages the hotel or something, he comes there to this hotel, and they're friction. They're just so opposite, but then they start to like each other, you know. But it's super good. It's super good. And Jaunty is such an interesting character. Like, I love him. Like, she keeps writing like little novellas. I'll read everything. Jaunty could go all over the world and have all these experiences, and I will read them all.
Ooh.
Yeah, definitely recommend that one. Yeah.
Sold.
Very nice, very nice. And it's funny, on Goodreads it definitely has it linked to the Foxhole Court as well, like links from those books, and then it also links to the Captive Prince series, which is really, I've read.
Ooh, okay, I haven't read
about that.
Like, if you like this, then you'll like the Foxhole Court, and then you'll like the Captive Prince. So I'm like, okay, I'm all in. I just added it to my Goodreads.
Well, and then another, I read a lot of YA fantasy. It's just something I really enjoy, and I've read like all of, you know, Red Queen, like all of those books. I've read them all, and like the Shadow and Bone book, you know, all of that stuff. And so the one that I've recently read is the Raven Cycle by Maggie. I can't even say it right.
Maggie Seawater.
Yeah,
I love
so good.
that
Raven Boy. Yeah,
I went and dropped a bunch of money on artwork for my walls from that series. I got a shirt that's got Gansey on it, and Gansey's at the top of my stairs. So whenever I run up the stairs, I have to, for good luck, say Gansey, and then I run to my office, and my sister is doing it now.
I love it.
Like, I just love that, and I listened to the first one on audio, and it was so good. Like the narrator was so good, but then her writing was so good that I was like, I have to see the words. I just have to see them and just like drool over them. You know, as a writer, like I just wanted to see them, you know? And so she's an awesome writer. So
I'm curious because since you brought that up, I'm just really curious because Charles and I talked about this last time. I think because last time we talked, I was reading the spin-off series, but for the Shadow and Bones versus the Crooked Kingdom, because everybody that I talked to loves the Crooked Kingdom so much more. And for me, the Shadow and Bones, the original trilogy, was so much better because for the buildup of the romance between the main characters, like, and you know, the Darkling, like, I just love that. And I think I'm in the minority, but I'm curious, Kay. Like, I don't know, we might cause an uproar, but what did you think?
No,
like,
I'm the same way. Like, and when we watched Shadow and Bone on Netflix, and I was like, she just needs to get with the Darkling because that is her fate. And my husband's like, he's the bad guy, and I was like, so you know,
that's what we want.
You don't know me by now.
We need to write that, Kay. We need to put her.
That hurt my heart so much. I love Six of Crows so much.
Well,
I like the TV show more than the books.
Yeah,
the Shadow and Bone part.
Yeah, and the characters were good. And what's funny is I liked in the Shadow and Bone TV show, I actually liked her best friend Mal better on the show than I did in the book. In the book, I was like, you can just die.
He's like whiny in the book. I was like, Mal, like, come on, you need to like.
Yeah, everyone wanted Nikolai and Alina. That was like the end game, but nope. But in the TV show, I'm like, oh yeah, I buy it. I buy it hardcore. Like, but then I'm like, the Darkling. They have that scene with the Alina and the Darkling. And I was like, romance writers, this is your next book. This is your next book. This one scene. Because I know the show is not going to give us a happily ever after with Alina and the Darkling. Yeah, I know it's going to be Alina and Mal, but like, I just need someone to just tickle that fancy in fiction.
I was like, really, when I heard that they were combining the Shadow and Bones with the Six of Crows, I was like, how are they going to do that? But the way that, like, you had to, because it really is like snippets. It's like cutaways of like what's going on.
I thought it was really awesome how they did that, because that's what I told my husband. I was like, I think they're combining both of these, and he was like, really? And as we started watching, and I was like, yeah, because this is with this and this is with this, and he was like, okay, you know, he just listens to my ranting, but
yeah.
It was really good.
Thank you, I'm glad. So Kay and I agree, Charles.
That's like, I feel like that's an unpopular opinion. I feel like a lot of people on BookTube prefer the Six of Crows duology.
They do.
And then they go read the Shadow and Bones trilogy, and they're like, but these two books. So when I saw like Matthias and Nina, I was just like,
see, with the
like,
Shadow
I
and
know what
Bone,
happens to you.
the thing that I like about Shadow and Bone is because what I like about is the Darkling, and then you've got Elena, and you've got the light, that opposite, the light and the dark, and just the good versus evil. Like, I just live for those kind of stories, and I felt like you get that in their story, whereas the other's more of just.
It's a heist story.
It's the adventure that they're going on is like that's the story. Whereas I like the not necessarily the character development, but the angst between the dynamics of like good versus evil, and the push and pull of like you're part good and part bad, and I'm identifying with you in that because I am in myself part good and part bad, and so I think I like the relationship component. That's what I read for, as opposed to the adventure and the story component, if that makes sense.
Right. You want to kind of sort of like the villain a little bit.
Yeah. So I went way off topic, but that's okay.
I can see your guys' argument. Like I can see, but like I'm Six of Crows. Like those characters, violent, like the relationships in that book. I was like, I just died. Like, especially the second book just, like, broke my heart. I was like, Lee, how dare you do this to me? With that one character. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it, but, like, I can see why I do like the Darkling. I feel like I like the TV show, what they're doing with the TV show more than the books. Like, I like how they're changing stuff up. And, like, adding more diversity and, like, stuff like that. So it's, like, a little bit more interesting. So I was like, this is, like, the first iteration where I actually believe Mal and Alina. Because I did not buy them in the book. But, like, this one, I'm like... And the thing with Zoya and, like, how she got angry, I was like, ooh. I was like, just go, like... Like, I don't know if you guys have watched Elite on Netflix. It's a Spanish drama, high school, but very, very mature. Oh, you have to... You guys will love it. It's, like, a murder mystery, kind of like Riverdale, but, like, definitely adult. There's, like, a lot of steamy time. There's a threesome that happens twice. Throughout the series, like characters hook up, the relationships change every season, and I was like, I wish they would kind of edge into that territory with Shadow and Bone, where we get that steam. But like, if you watch Elite, you will like be hooked. Like it's English dub, so you don't have to read subtitles.
Right.
But it is like probably like I was like, how did Netflix get me to watch a foreign language drama that I'm like this invested in? I was just like. It's so good. So I highly recommend that series.
So if I can do like a little like, so when you're talking about TV shows and things like, okay, if you really like character development and you like the dark versus the light and that conflict and that angst, I'm watching right now, and I was torn. I was like, I'm not going to do it because it seems a little young, but I was like, you know what, I am, and I'm so glad that I did it. It's on Hulu and it's called Cruel Summer. Have you watched this? It is really, really good. It is about it's set in the 90s, and there's 3 different timelines, I think 93, 94, and 95. And it's about a girl who is abducted, and she is held captive by this teacher. And it's 2 different stories. One girl who is like the nerdy kind of like not popular girl, and one girl who's very popular. And it's about both of their stories and accounts of what happens and a lawsuit that occurs as a result of one not saving the other. And as the story unfolds from this split timeline, you feel like you really identify with one character, but then something else comes out, and then you're like, no, and then you go over here with this other character. And the way that the story sort of unfolds, it's really good versus evil versus what is good, and that line of morality that sort of moves. You think you know, you don't know. As you learn more information and sort of your allegiance changes, and it's all what happens in the town, the small town in Texas, where everybody's allegiance sort of changes as they get more of the story. It's so good.
I'm right up my alley.
Yeah, I think based on the things that I read that you write, I think that you might really appreciate it. It's called Cruel Summer, and it's on.
Well, we're always looking for new shows, so I'll have to tell my husband about it.
And see if it's up your alley.
But thank you so much, Kay Webster, for coming on my channel. It has been absolutely amazing talking to you. Like, you're one of our favorite authors. Like, probably like in like the top. I would say like top 5%, because I have a lot of favorite authors. But like, you are definitely like nearing that top spot. But for you guys watching, I'll link all of Kate Webster's social media links as well, where you can go buy the books that we discussed in this interview today. So definitely go check them out. You will absolutely love her books, and we'll also include links for her upcoming books, The Fury and the Reckless, and then the upcoming Dragon book in her MC series. So if you want to go and pre-order those books as well, you can do that down below. And I'll also link Taji's channel down below as well. But thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you guys for a brand new video. Bye, everyone.